Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is John Bullard with another episode of Pro Wrestling Tonight. With me, without a doubt, the man who has wrestled many of legends. He's been there, done that, has a t-shirt and hat right along with it. The man who has wrestled in Continental, the Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, and also WWF. The one and only Randy Hogan. Randy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, John. This is wonderful. A big fan of Chicagoland and of you, and just to be part of it and talk to your fans and following. It's quite an honor for me, way down here in Florida.
Hey, Randy, I tell you what, thank you for being on the show. Myself and my wife and everyone in the roster has been looking forward to this for a long time, having you on board. So, Randy Mania running wild. So,
running wild, brother.
Big question. So, to start off with this interview with you, to touch about the different highlight careers that you had, how did you get involved in the world of professional wrestling?
You know, I was a fan since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Raised in Detroit, my grandparents used to take me to the arenas when they had the matches every month. I mean, they were the fans' fan. They were hardcore fans back in the day. Okay, so I was raised watching guys like the original Sheik and Bobo Brazil, Dick the Bruiser, Killer Kowalski. I saw Buddy Rogers. I saw the original Gorgeous George. They all came through Detroit. So I was raised on this. And I think if you start when your roots are set when you're young, certain things stay with you. And for me, it was professional wrestling my whole life. Always went to the matches, didn't know nothing about it. Of course, kayfabe was alive and well, didn't know anything, what was real, what's not real. Always wondered, even into my young adulthood. So I was in the restaurant business and traveled around. And before that, I played in a band. We used to travel all around the states and everything. And I was playing in a Holiday Inn in Columbus, Georgia. And Wednesday nights they had the TV tapings there at the arena. And the wrestlers used to stay at the Holiday Inn that I was playing at quite often. So I got to meet and see and guys like Eddie Mansfield, Wahoo McDaniel, guys like that. They would come in, very friendly. And I was like a kid in a candy shop. I just wanted autographs and everything. They were so cool. So I got to know Eddie Mansfield probably better than anybody there, became friends with him. Jerry and Ted Oates were a tag team worldwide, big in Japan, big over here, owned a gym there. And all the wrestlers used to work out in his gym.
Oh, wow.
So when I was there, I started going over to their gym with Eddie Mansfield and talk a little bit about wrestling. Again, never breaking kayfabe. Didn't know nothing about it except I loved it. So my journeys took me down to Boca Raton, Florida, and was managing a restaurant at the time, and they closed it up. And I said, what am I going to do now? I said, I always wondered if this wrestling was real or if it was fake. So I want to find out. So I picked up the phone and I called Jerry Oates at Oates Gym. I said, Jerry, do you know anybody that trains anybody down here? And he says, well, no, only one, Hiro Matsuda, who trained Lex Luger, Hulk Hogan, worked with Eddie Graham on the Grahams and Steve Kern and them guys. He said, but I train guys up here. At the time, he was training Marty Jannetty, which is probably one of the only names everybody would know.
Absolutely.
So we went back and forth, and next thing I know, I packed everything up in my car, single at the time, and drove up to Columbus, Georgia, got me a job managing a po' folks restaurant, and that paid for my wrestling school. So I went through a wrestling school with Jerry, hurt my ankle, was out of it for a few months, came back. In the meantime, they had opened up another school. They had a ring in it. Originally, we just had like an aerobics room behind the gym, behind Oates Gym. So we learned how to take a bump the real way. You learn on cement floors, maybe a little inch gym pad, and that was it. So, which I think was an advantage, because when I finally got in a ring and had to take a bump in a real ring, it was like being on a waterbed.
Compared to that, yeah.
Yes. So I went through and I trained for 13 months. And at the end of that 13 months, they had a fundraiser for the Police Athletic League in Columbus, Georgia. Just a freebie put on by the students and Ted and Jerry Oates, of course. So that was my first real match. And I got through it, and I was happy. I was satisfied. I never wanted to be a wrestler. I just wanted to know the ins and outs of the business. So I went in, I went through a match. I said, wow, I know it all now. Okay, I'm done. So pretty much I was done. Still going to the matches whenever they come to town, and went on a Wednesday night, and a guy I trained with was putting up the ring. So I said, Bill, what are you doing? He says, well, they rent my ring from me now when they come in town. And he says, what are you doing? And I said, well, nothing, just living the life. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm wrestling every 2 weeks in this little bar up in North Georgia. He says, why don't you come with me? Bring your stuff. And I says, I'm not going to bring my stuff. I don't want to wrestle, but I'll come watch you, being a fan. So I went, and I went, and I went. And then a month later or so, for some stupid reason, I took my bag with me. And somebody didn't show up. So the promoter guy, now this bar had about 30 drunken soldiers in it. That was about it. That was the audience. So he said, Bill, does your buddy want to wrestle? Or want to work tonight? And he said, sure he does. So he says, okay. He says, you're going to wrestle this guy named The Animal. Now remember, I've only had one little jobbed out match. So I says, okay. He said, and the Animal's going to go over. I says, okay. So I go back in the locker room with my buddy Bill. I says, Bill, I'm wrestling this Animal, and he's going over. What does that mean? Does that mean like he's going over the top rope, or I'm going over the rope or something? I didn't know what going over meant. So he said, no, dummy. So he schooled me. So I had the match, and it went well. I was wrestling as Randy Franklin. I always had the mustache since I was like 18, and brown hair and everything, long hair. And so he said, the promoter says, can you come back next week? And I said, sure. Now, I didn't get paid either. This was the old days, the handshake and hot dog thing. I don't even think I got a hot dog. But he said, come back next week. I said, yeah, I can come back next week. He says, you look a little bit like this this Hulk Hogan coming up. Now, Hulk Hogan was just coming up at the times.
Yeah.
He says, so we're going to call you Hal Hogan. Hal Hogan. I says, okay. He says, you're going to be his cousin or his nephew or something. I says, okay. So that's where the Hogan thing got started. So I went home, told my girlfriend, I'm going to be Randy Hogan now. So you got to bleach my hair. So I bleached my hair, bleached my eyebrows, my mustache, everything blonde, had a tan anyways, and went back now as Randy Hogan. And that's how it all started. And then professional courtesy, when you're on a card with a bunch of guys that are wrestling other shows, weekends, whatever, you go watch them to support them.
Of course.
And they introduce you usually to the promoter as a courtesy. If you can ever use me, let me know, whatever. So one match leads to another match, to another match, to another little outlaw at the time, indies now. It used to be outlaw shows. And in the meantime, I was learning how to work a little bit better, and was working up the ladder, some main events, but mainly semi-main events, mid-card stuff. And I worked on a show with a guy who was a self-proclaimed Alabama junior heavyweight champion for about 40 years. Action Mike Jackson.
Yep, I know him very well.
Still a big guy. Wonderful guy, okay? And, of course, he was on TV every week. He was jobbing. And I said, Mike, how do you get on TV? And he said, well, I can't guarantee nothing, but just like the old bar thing, he says, if you come up with me a couple of weeks, I'll see what I can do. At least you get to see the show. I'd never been in a TV studio or nothing else, much less be around all these heroes of mine at the time. So I went up 2 or 3 weeks with Mike to WTBS Studios in Atlanta and sat in the crowd and watched the TV tapings, and it was fun. I had, of course, Jim Crockett was doing the announcer with Tony Schiavone at the time, and all the big guys. This was part of Crockett's NWA. So same story as the bar. Somebody didn't show up. J.J. Dillon was doing the booking, and goes to Mike and says, "Mike, your guy want to work?" And Mike says, "Well, yeah." So then he says, "Hogan, come here." He says, "Okay." So I went back there. And first off, they wanted to know what name you want to go by. I said, well, I did Randy Hogan. Usually they change your name, these things, but they didn't. There's a reason for that. Anyways, so I go in and he says, okay, you're going to wrestle a tag match against the Warlord and the Barbarian.
Yep.
My first big time match, my first TV match. I've never seen these guys. So I walked back in the locker room, and I mean, a kid in awe. I was 7 years old again. Here I got Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, the Midnight Express, a zillion other big name guys that I grew up. I just wanted to go up and shake their hand in that, but you got to be cool, Yeah. So I was being cool, sitting with the other jobbers, sitting in the corner, minding our own business by ourselves, feeling totally out of place. And Terry Funk, the only one of the big names, he actually walked across the room, went to every one of us little job guys and said, hello, my name's Terry Funk. What's your name? He was the sweetest, nicest gentleman, made everybody feel comfortable. Anyways, first match was, yeah, go ahead.
And that's been the thing about Terry's whole career. Everyone has said that for no matter who you were, he would always introduce himself to the staff, to the security. Yes. To him, he was just one of the guys who he never saw himself as a superstar. He was just a nice guy.
Comes right to you, right in your face. My name's Terry Funk. What's your name? I'm so glad to meet you. Wow. So that was my first big impression. So anyways, I had my match against the Warlord and the Barbarian. These guys are mammoths.
Yeah.
And so the first highlight of that was the Warlord pressed me over his head. Now, the Warlord's about, 6'6", 6'7", so I'm like 7.5 feet up in the air. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what am I going to do now? Teddy Long was the referee. So I'm up there, and he knew I was scared, I guess. So Teddy says, tuck your head. So anyways, let me go, and I landed perfect. I wanted to just jump up and say, yes, but I didn't. So I sold it. Anyways, tags in, Barbarian comes in, shoots me in the ropes. Says, as he's shooting me off, goes, boo-boo. And I said, boo-boo. Okay, well, now again, I'm scared to death. Adrenaline's running, 100 miles an hour. I hit those ropes and come off, not knowing what to expect. Next thing I know, I got like a size 15 boot in my face.
Right in the face.
Breaks my nose. Blood all over. It's a TV thing. So bottom line is what he was saying was big boot, like watch for the big boot. But all I heard was boo, because he's Tongan, I guess, but it's very heavy accent, Samoan, Tongan, whatever. So that was how I got into it. And then I guess they felt sorry for me. So J.J. Dillon said, you come back next week too. So that's how I started doing TV every week with them. And Turner bought her from Crockett. And they let a lot of the enhancement guys go. Because now they didn't want us just to be a piece of meat. There was a place for that, but they wanted guys that knew how to work, that were trained, that could get in there with a Steamboat or a Brad Armstrong or somebody and show their technical side as well as our own, other than being in there with a Vader or a Road Warrior that you were just, a piece of meat. Yeah. So guys like me, George South, Italian Stallion, there's about 6 or 7 of us that kept on and worked pretty steadily. And a lot of the other guys just kind of disappeared.
Now,
so that's how it all started.
What was it really like working for the Crocketts? I mean, that's, unfortunately, Jim Crockett Jr. passed away yesterday, which is a shame because I always heard he was such a great guy to work for. But what was it? I mean, as a kid, I grew up watching NWA Crockett. So getting a chance to talk to you and hearing these stories is just like a kid in a candy store learning this hearing these things. But what was it like to walk into that famous studio? And I mean, that had to be like the coolest thing in the world, just to know, like, okay, one, I'm be on national television, but two, I'm
cool. What's really cool is you get the park underneath, and then you walk up to the studio, and it's a TV studio. Yeah. First, I was shocked because I thought it was like a big room, They got maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing 60, 70 people maybe sitting in this little studio, and they're all on one side. You know, they got cameras on the other side, and they got this little podium set up, you know, that had the announcers and everything. I'm just in awe of it. You know, it actually, the first time in, it's hard to focus on what you're supposed to be doing, wrestling, because you're just taking it all in. Again, like a little kid in a candy shop. You're taking it all in at the same time. And then, you know, you got Ric Flair walking by you. You got Steamboat walking by you. You know, you got all these big name, all these guys walking around in that. And it's just unbelievable, the feeling that you get, especially when you're a big fan like I was.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was it. Jim Crockett was always soft-spoken. I don't know how he was business-wise behind the scenes, okay? But he always had time, called you by your name. Hello, Randy, whatever. David Crockett, he was a little cockier. You know, his brother did the announcing. Jim Crockett was just a quiet, soft-spoken, sweet guy. Can't say one bad thing about him. I didn't even hear any bad rumors about him. Everybody loved him.
In wrestling, he was considered one of the better bosses to work for.
Yeah. It's just a shame. So, you know, and again, why they sold out, you know, everybody's got all their ideas, and then who really knows? You know, I'm sure he got a good price. I'm sure he didn't want to work as hard as he'd been working all these years and everything. Like I said, all the rumors, you know, and then WCW came in, and then when Turner, you know, sold that to Vince, the same thing. The business was going down, and they blame it on Russo coming in and infiltrating, and they blamed it on Eric Bischoff and Jim Herd and all these guys. Again, we're not privy to that. All I know is the old days, you know, pin me, pay me. And I always got paid. My check never bounced, you know. Most of the people, most of the guys treated us with respect. You know, they appreciated what we did and actually what we meant to them, you know. And there were some that weren't quite so friendly and warm and inviting, and not really good experiences with a few of them. But for the most part, everybody was really great, very helpful.
Now, during this time, who was some of your favorite people to actually wrestle against when you was doing television matches?
Probably my favorite was the Midnight Express with Jimmy Cornette. I wrestled him probably more than anybody, and I wrestled every faction. Bobby Eaton and Stanley Lane, and Bobby and Dennis Condrey, and Dennis and Randy Rose. I went through the whole bunch of them. I went through the original Midnight Express that was managed by Paulie Dangerously, which is Paul Heyman, and to the new one, and I got to be pretty close with Jimmy Cornette in that bunch. They were probably my favorites that I wrestled the most. Barry Windham stands out as being just smooth as silk, you know, very, very nice. Larry Zbyszko at the time was another true gentleman. Sting was friendly once you got to know him, standoffish at first. At the time, he was tag teaming with Lex Luger, and Luger was just the opposite. Luger was.
That's what a lot of people have said. When he was young, he was not really as friendly with people as he is now.
As he came across on TV, he was that way in real life. I mean, he thought he was it, and he let it be known. You know, he never did me wrong or anything, but he just always carried that attitude. They used to call it kind of like an Oldie Anderson attitude. Yes. Oldie, they said, was really mean and gruff and everything. And luckily, I had no real dealings with him. But it's funny how they later in life they end up where they are. You know, Oldie's, of course, was in a wheelchair, and Lex is about 160 pounds now of everything. It's a shame, but again, they treated me well. Luger was very standoffish. Sting, after you worked him a few times and he got to know you, they were very, very helpful, not only giving us advice and constructive criticism, but in keeping us employed. Now, back in those days, a lot of times they would have, if you're doing TV taping, the over guys would have a voice in who they worked. I know Flair always liked a guy named Gerald Price, and he loved George South. He just liked to work, good chemistry, worked them a lot. I was that way with Midnight Express and Sting at the time. And it worked, I think, first of all, because we were trained. You know, we weren't backyard wrestlers. We didn't teach ourselves. We were trained, and we were trained to learn how to wrestle, mat wrestle. You didn't learn how to punch and how to kick and all that kind of stuff. You didn't do that. You learned the basic. You learned how to grapple. And that was your foundation, okay? And it's so important. I think that's lacking a little bit nowadays. I think now everybody wants to be a Luger. Everybody wants to be the star. Everybody's got that little cocky edge to them instead of being humbling and being appreciative of really where they are and who got them there. So anyways, I would have the Midnight Express. I'd have Sting. I had Kevin Sullivan, who was another very close friend of mine at the time when we got there, speaking on our behalf, you know. So when Sullivan was working with the Varsity Club, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Mike Rotundo at the time, they wanted to work with me. And again, because we were trained, we could take about any kind of fall. Like a cat, we always got in position. And I was lighter than most. I was usually about 225 to 230 is what weight I went. And at the time, that was pretty small, not like nowadays. So these guys could pick me up and throw me around like a rag doll. And I didn't complain. I do whatever they want to do. You know, again, professionalism in the locker room, so important, even to this day. No matter what happens in that ring, you go back to the locker room, you thank the guy for the match, you know, and you go on, you know. If they ask you a question or something, fine. But there's no going back there steaming and mad and stamping your foot and all this kind of stuff like they do sometimes I hear nowadays. So because I didn't whine and complain, I did whatever they wanted, whatever they asked me to do. That was job security, and that kept me on for as long as I wanted to be doing TV.
Now, once your time doing studio wrestling, and I know you worked for Vince for a short period of time as well, Super WWF.
Just some on-off matches, yeah.
Yeah. So what has Randy Hogan himself been up to lately? I know you've been on the convention scene an awful lot.
That's it. And it's funny that I got a call about a year and a half ago out of the clear blue. Would you like to do a convention? A what? I didn't know nothing about conventions. Yeah. And the vendor said, no. He said, we'll bring you in. You know, it's going to be in New York. It's called The Big Event. And it's one of the biggest ones in the nation. And they've got like 80 different wrestlers, big name wrestlers. At the time, that the headliners was, I think, Braun Strowman, Bret Hart, and The Undertaker. They were there. And they, of course, had their own little separate room. But there's like 4,000 people went through there. So I said, I'll come up. Yeah. What do I do? So he said, well, he says, we explained the deal. And flew me up, fed me, put me up. And I said, okay, well, what do I wear? What do I do? A lot of these guys at the convention, they're just in street clothes. You don't know who they are because you don't look like you look 30 or 40 years ago, you know? So he said, you got some Hogan stuff? And I said, yeah. Now, I never dressed in the Hogan gimmick ever in my career. I had turquoise boots, turquoise trunks, a black velvet robe with sequins and turquoise and everything. That was it until this vendor said, I want you to do Hogan. So I got the Randomania t-shirts made, sunglasses, bandana caps, wristbands. I did the whole Hogan thing. We bought the spandex, dyed my beautiful turquoise boots. The only pair I ever had all those years, all that history, put 13 coats of paint on them to make them yellow patent leather. So that's how the whole, as they say, the whole Hogan gimmick or impersonation came up. I never said I was related to him, his cousin, his uncle, his brother, nothing else. The media, the people did. A lot of times they make us wrestlers into what they want us to be. So we do it. So that's how that's in. So I went up to this convention. I had a ball. I couldn't believe how much fun it was. Had one day in New York, and then we went up to Albany, New York for another convention the second day. Absolutely loved it. Now, this was in March. Okay. I came home on a Monday. That Wednesday, they closed everything down because that's when the virus hit.
Oh, I know. It
2
was
days
horrible.
later, and I was on a flight from New York down to Florida. So that pretty much cut off all of that. And then somebody come up with the idea of doing these virtual sales and stuff.
Virtual signings.
Yeah. So I went up, actually did my first one about a couple of months ago up in Connecticut. And it was fun. It's not as good as face-to-face, but it was a meet and greet. We had people coming into the store, plus we'd sign them on the television and make it out to them. And it was as close as you can get to a real appearance.
Of course.
And now things are opening up. So I've got another virtual coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to do out of the house here, put on by a vendor, but those are starting to come alive. And now we got some conventions coming up. I've got one coming up in Georgia in a couple of weeks. And then after that, we got one in the Carolinas coming up and one in Jacksonville, Florida. So things are starting to open up. So hopefully there'll be enough people who want to see me and they'll bring me in some more.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, it's Randy Mania. I mean, why not,
brother?
Exactly. So for any fans who want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you, Randy?
Facebook is so easy. You can look under Randy Mule, which is it's under Kathy is my wife. That's probably the name that you're looking at when you're looking at my face on the screen here. Okay. Either that or just Randy Hogan. Or I have a second Facebook that's the easiest, Randy Hogan Stuff. Okay. If you want to know about Randy Hogan Stuff, just go to Randy Hogan Stuff. It's got it's got some copies of different podcasts and shows and things of your own and things are coming up and everything. It's just
it's just a good way for fans.
Strictly for fans, strictly wrestling. Yeah. And I'm on it every day, all the time. They can reach me, send me a private message or anything. I'll always answer them. I'm always there. I'm the easiest guy in town to find.
Yeah. And one of the nicest, and let me tell you this, folks, who's watching this at home, also one of the nicest, genuine guys anyone could ever talk to.
John, thank you. And one day I hope to get up to your neck of the woods.
We're working on that, my friend. I can't wait to have you in the TV studio with us.
Randomania, okay, is going to put it out around the country, around the world, and we're going to get rid of this coronavirus thing, okay? Randomania is probably the only power that's a little bit stronger than that, okay? And we're going to unleash it because I got some friends up there in Chicagoland that I want to see, some that are really close. Here through the grapevine, someone's having a little bit of trouble, okay? I'm trying to advise them. And I said, if you need my help sometime, you just give me a call and I'll be up there to help you. So you never know when I might show up at Chicagoland. I'm counting on it. Anybody who needs my help or needs me, Randomania, we're running wild, brother.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, Randy Hogan. Randy, thank you so kindly for being on our show tonight. It is a true privilege, my friend, and thank you once again for everything.
Oh, John, thank you, and thank you, fans, and everybody just who loves the business. That's what keeps us going.
Absolutely. Fans, check out Randy at Randy Hogan Stuff on Facebook. But most importantly, let's have a great time. Let's be safe. Wear a mask, hand sanitizer. Let's just try to get this COVID-19 all over with and go back to living normal. But most importantly, folks, we'll see each and every one of you at ringside.